So we are in the third chapter of Romans. Last week we went down through the first 8 verses. And today we're going to start with the 9th verse of the third chapter and go all the way down through the 20th verse. Okay? So Romans chapter 3. I'll start reading for us, starting with verse 9. It says, "What then? Are we better than they?" So I want you to think about, as we're reading, well, no, I don't want you to think about while we're reading. Let's follow it, but then we'll go back and we'll talk about, there's questions already that we need to kind of clarify for context, okay? "What then? Are we better than they? No, in no way, or no wise. For we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under sin. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that what things soever the law says, it says to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin." A lot of inspiring things there, right? So I think this is after today's lesson, we're finally going to be able to shift gears, because it's kind of like, if I'm the Apostle Paul, I'd be saying to Paul right now as I'm reading this letter for the first time, man, you got nothing but bad news so far. There's bad news after bad news after bad news. So where's the good news? There's got to be some good news, right? And of course there is. And we'll be able to kind of cross into that more next week, although it's hard to not talk about it even before then. So in verse 9, he says, "What then? Are we better than they?" Why do you think Paul asked that question in the context of what he had been talking about? What then? Are we better than they? Who's we? The Jews. They are the Gentiles. Or you could say any non-Jew. Jews and everybody else. Okay? So he asks the question, are we Jews better than they? Paul was a Jew, right? Are we better than they? Why did he ask that question? Could it be that he asked that question based on something he had already been saying? Look at verse 1 of chapter 3. "What advantage then has the Jew? Or what profit is there of circumcision?" Verse 2, "Much in every way." So if you remember last week, we talked about the advantage of the Jews. Jews were given unique advantages. And he was bringing that out previously. So then, though, he doesn't want to leave the wrong impression, so he asked the question, are the Jews better than they, the Gentiles. And he says, he answers his own question right away in verse 9 when he says, no, in no wise, for we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles. Who does that include? Everybody. Everybody. Both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under sin. And there is I don't do this, but just to quote Al Gore, remember he wrote a book a long time ago about the supposed, environmental issues. And anybody remember the title of his book? The Unfortunate Truth. This is an unfortunate truth. What is the unfortunate truth? What did Paul tell us just now? We are all under sin. We're all under sin. Man, I wish it wasn't that way. And one of the reasons, a lot of the reasons why I wish that wasn't that way is that I'd like to wake up one morning and not be in a fight. But I am. Every morning I wake up, I'm in a fight. And what is that? How does the Bible describe this fight? It does it in different ways. Anybody come up with something that the Bible says about this fight that we're all in every day?
Battle between good and evil.
Between good and evil? And the what? Versus the Spirit. Battle between the Spirit and the flesh. Good and evil, Spirit and flesh. Right? So we're all in this battle every single day. That's just the way it is. And so, in the outline, number one, everyone is under sin. Now, it's interesting the way that Paul puts this. He doesn't say everybody has sinned in this particular passage. He does in other places. He says everybody is under sin. Does that create any kind of a mental image to you when he says everybody's under sin? Under a table? Or under a foot? Like a slave to it? Or it just covers us under a blanket of sin? We're under it? Is there any way out? That's an interesting question. We're all under sin. Is there any way out? Well, yeah. In theological terms, there's an ultimate way out. But on a practical level, too, it's the difference between what we sometimes call positional and practical truth. Positional truth is what we have been given by God that lasts forever, that is sealed, that will never change. Practical is our daily life experience, how we manage our daily lives. Paul says, we are all under sin. This is the universal truth. Do you think everybody in the world agrees with that statement? No. You're right, they don't. Not everybody likes that. I always give this example. I've probably said this to you before, and I'll try to keep it really short, but once upon a time, I thought I wanted to be a CHP officer. So I started going through the process, and I got to the oral interview. And before I went into the interview, they had, I don't remember now, 3 or 4 questions on a sheet of paper. And I'm supposed to write out my answers. So there's a question and then a space on the paper for you to write your answer. And one of the questions was, why do we need laws? Now, I was, at this point in time, I had already been a pastor. And I thought, I don't know what the Lord's, I got to take care of my family. I'm not sure what he's going to do here, so maybe I can go into law enforcement. As it turns out, God blessed me by not putting me in law enforcement. And I went to EMS, instead to make a living, because I had to make a living. But anyway, one of the questions was, why do we need laws? So my pastor, my Christian brain kicked right in. And I started writing about because everybody is a lawbreaker by nature. And so, and I'm writing the whole thing out. Well, that submarined me right there, man. Not to the three CHP guys that were on the panel. There were three CHP guys that were on the panel, and then there was one lady. And it's not because she was a lady. She was a representative of a citizen, just a citizen. And she took issue. I'm not a lawbreaker. I'm not a sinner. I don't do those things. Now, you know what? I think every one of us sitting here, to some degree, in some kind of a context, have had that same thought. I don't do that. Would never do that. You listen to people that get the worst of the worst criminals, the people that do the most despicable things, and they go to court and they get found guilty, and now they come to sentencing. And what's one of the things that they let people do when the guy is being sentenced? They let the victim and the victim's family come forward and make statements. And boy, I tell you what, they usually let them have it, right? And they call them things like monster, inhuman, stuff like that. And you know what? That's not true. That guy who did the most despicable thing that you could ever think of is no different than you and I. The only difference is the degree in which he let himself succumb to the fact that he is under sin. So there are, not everybody's a serial killer. Not everybody does that. Yes, there are degrees of evil in that sense. Yet, we need to understand this idea of a sin. And so we understand, we almost think of it in medical terms, we're living under a curse. It's not a voodoo curse. Somebody's not sticking needles in some kind of a doll and putting a curse on us. Feels like something. You bet. Man, this every morning when I first get up, it's like, wow, who did this to me? It's like I've been, 15 rounds with Mike Tyson or something. But yeah, we're all under this curse that is universal, okay? And it, of course, is the curse of sin. It is the curse of sin. So now, let's understand. So this is not in your outline. Hopefully you can read it good enough. Here are, right out of the Vine's Expository Dictionary, I think, definitions of sin. Okay? To be without a share in. And we're going to come back to that in a second. To miss the mark. To err. Be mistaken. To miss or wander from the path of uprightness and honor, to do or go wrong. To wander from the law of God, violate God's law, sin that which is done wrong, sin in an offense, a violation of the divine law in thought or in act. Ugh, I hate that last part. Because it doesn't mean anything if you don't actually go out and do something, but if in thought you're thinking, if I had the chance I would, guess what? What did Jesus say? You've already done it. Already done it. So here, all these things are different definitions of that same Greek word, which is the Greek word hamartano. Hamartano. Sin. Okay? But look at that first one there. To be without a share in. I mean, I knew that the one I knew the best was to miss the mark. Sin means to miss the mark. And it literally comes from the idea of an archer drawing his bow, flinging the arrow, and the arrow coming up short of his target. It falls short. That's missing the mark. Sin is missing the mark. What is the mark that we're trying to hit? Bullseye or what? Perfection. Righteousness. Right? We're all trying to hit that. And we fall short. We miss the mark. But what about to be without a share in? I read that, I go, you know what? I'm sure I saw that before, but I'd never really thought about it. What in the world is he talking about there? What is that idea of the definition of sin? Got any ideas? Okay, so here it is. Listen to this. The definition to be without a share in stems directly from the ancient Greek root for sin, hamartarno. In biblical studies, this word is famously cataloged in resources like Strong's Concordance and Thayer's Bible Dictionary, where it breaks it down into two basic core concepts. Now, here's a whole list, but here they say there's two basic core ideas, okay? Number one, to miss the mark, to fall short, like the archer with his arrow. Number two, to be without a share in. Now, this is the one that was news to me. So here's what this means. Literally, it is derived from combining the alpha privative, which is A. If you see an A before a word, what does that tell you? Whatever that word is, you have an A before the word, and it tells you the opposite. So if you're moral, you're moral. If you're amoral, you don't have morality. That's an example. A before means the opposite of that. So instead, it defines sin. Theologically, this shifts the perspective of sin away from a simple list of bad rules broken. Instead, it defines sin as a state of disconnection. Sin is a state of disconnection, forfeiture, having no share in God's divine life, grace, or kingdom. It signifies becoming cut off from fellowship with God or falling short of the ultimate purpose for which humanity was created. Now, does that make some sense now? Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, here's God, and what comes along with God? His truth, His blessings, His promises. It's a wonderful gift basket that comes with God. If you have God, you've got all this stuff. Sin says, no, you don't get the gift basket. You have no share in that. Sin is being cut out of your parents' will, and you don't get any of the inheritance whatsoever. No share. That is sin. Now, if I were to give you this, it's not in your outline, but if I were to give you this, sin equals what? We've talked about this before. Huh? Yeah, we're going to get there, but what's the the one quick short word. Sin equals death. So now then, what's the next question? What is death? Death is separation. Physical death. What is physical death? When somebody dies, we put them in a coffin, or it doesn't matter whether they're cremated or whatever else. What has happened? There you go. The soul is what lasts forever. The body is just the house that the soul lives in. So physical death, physical separation is soul and body departing from each other. Okay? Spiritual death, what is that? Separation from God. So it is the soul, which is the eternal part of all of us, being eternally separated from God. Physical death, body separates from the soul. Spiritual death, soul separates from God. We have no part in Him. And who is in this condition? Everybody. Okay? Okay, so okay, and yeah, that's a good question, and it's hard to talk about this because I'm only talking about one side of the coin today mainly. There's another side, but so perhaps one of the best ways to say it, I think in one of the points here, I have it. Yeah, under main point 2 and E, when we get there, I have one word that I think describes pretty well. Mankind, humankind, in their quote-unquote natural state is under sin. And because they're under sin, they miss the mark. They never will be good enough to reach God's righteousness. They have no share in God and all the gift basket stuff that comes with God. They don't have no share in it. Theologically, we call this the depravity of humans, human depravity. Some people go absolutely far, far to one end with this idea of human depravity. And we don't have time to get into that right now. That's kind of another deep theological thing, you know. But that's what we're talking about. Man in his natural state. So let's think about the picture of the first time that this ever happened. Do we have a picture in the Bible of the first time that this happened to any human being? And before that, Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. What did they have before they sinned? They had paradise, they had the garden, they had everything that they needed. They had God who would come spend time with them, right? They had God and the gift basket. Everything comes with Him. They had it. But when they sinned, now they had no share in that. They were separated. They were cast out of the garden. Now, they did come back into a fellowship with God through faith, and that's the other side of this coin that we'll get to next week. But in their natural state, when God created them in their natural state, they were in a state of innocence. They were in a state of fellowship with God. They enjoyed all the blessings of God, everything that came along with them. They had it all. And when they sinned, boom, cut off. Adam had to work hard for the rest of his life to eke out, a subsistence, a living in the world. And so, all the things that came with that curse, okay? So, what does this mean? We're all under sin. What does it mean? Well, verses 10 through 18, Paul begins to describe what and why all this is true. Okay? Now, how does Paul do this? What's the first thing it says in verse 10? What does that tell you? What does that tell you? He's, yeah. Where is it written down? Old Testament. Paul is quoting Old Testament. He's not quoting one particular section of Old Testament scripture. He is cherry picking. It's not wrong to cherry pick as long as you're honest with the context of each statement. So you can preachers do it all the time. They cherry pick verses that go along with the subject that they're preaching about. And that's fine as long as you're honest about the context of that cherry that you just picked. This is what Paul's doing here. He's taking little quirks, little sections from the Old Testament. And we don't have time to go into all of them. Your Bible may have references there for you under the verses to direct you to the Old Testament verse that he's referring to. So let's go through them and find out what Paul says. As it is written, number one, there is none righteous, no, not one. No one is righteous. What does righteous mean? Yeah? It's, one of the easiest way to think is righteous is right. It's how to live right. There's a right way and a wrong way, yeah. So righteousness is right, but here's the trick. It's not right in the eyes of who? Now, I said it's not right in the eyes of men. You do what humankind, what the culture tells you to do. In fact, when I was growing up in the 70s, it was a slang term, man. You were talking to somebody and they say, "Oh, man, that's righteous." It was a slang term. What do they mean by that? That's righteous, man. That's good. It's cool. It's something to be admired, right? Excuse me. So you can't take that from the eyes of men. What's really righteous is what God says is righteous. That's the righteousness that we are talking about here, okay? So, no one is righteous. No one understands. Look what he says next. There is none that understandeth. And I put in parentheses there, God. There's nobody that understands God. There are verses, and I could have just blasted these things with a bunch of verses, but who can know the mind of God? The scriptures ask. Right? God's ways are not our ways. What is the big problem with me wanting to take control of my life and make my own decisions without any respect or any idea about God and his existence and his rights over me? What's the big deal? Why is that so bad? Because it's only going to do one thing. It's going to lead me to destruction. Because I don't understand God. And yet every time we question God, and how many times in our hearts and our minds, or maybe even verbalize it, we say, "Why, God, did you do this?" Now, I understand sometimes maybe that's just an honest, open seeking, and yet you got to be very, very careful with that line of thought, because hidden underneath that idea of asking or even demanding, why, God, did you do this or that? What lies underneath that? Yeah? You're not trusting God? You're not letting God be God? You're not acknowledging the fact that He, newsflash, knows more than you? And so we question it because we think we have all knowledge. It's obvious. But there's only one that has all knowledge. Nobody understands God. Nobody seeks God. And then I added, and this is what he says here, there's none that understandeth, there is none that seeketh after God. I added, on their own. Man in his natural state is not naturally inclined to seek after God. Do people seek after God? Yeah, they do. People do seek after God. The question is how and why. It's not because they were born with this, it's not because of their sin nature driving them. That's a better way of saying it. It's not because of their sin nature driving them to seek after God. There's something else in play here. And obviously, that something else is God Himself. Paul told the people in Athens that God's purpose was that we all, as human beings, should seek after Him. We should seek God. And yet God man in his natural state is not naturally inclined to do that. So something else has to happen for anybody to seek after God. Paul here says nobody does it on their own. It just keeps getting better. Everyone has gone astray. Verse 12, they are all gone out of the way. They've all gone out of the way. Jim?
Isn't a lot of that because 98% of human bodies in the world, I'll take care of it tomorrow?
Yeah, that definitely, I'm not an Olympic athlete, but I have Olympic athlete capabilities of procrastinating. I'm at an Olympic level. I can procrastinate with anybody until I'm forced into the corner, and then I dig in and get it done. When I absolutely have to do that. Yeah, that can be one of the things.
And it seems like as more generations come along, there's more.
Sure, yeah. We all have our, unique characteristics in our character, but we're all under that same blanket. We're all under sin. It pops up in different ways for different people. We've all gone astray, and Isaiah 53:6 is one of them that I put down there. Somebody want to look that up real quick and read it for us? That's a pretty famous Old Testament scripture. You probably know it by heart if I started it. Isaiah 53:6. What does it say? Somebody read it.
All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all.
All we like sheep have gone astray. One of the characteristics of a sheep needs a shepherd. All you got to do to get a sheep in a lot of trouble is to not have a shepherd around. So we go astray. We go on our own way, and our own way gets us in trouble. Every single time it'll get you in trouble. if it's your own way and not God's way. Okay? No one does good. They are all gone out of the way. We're in verse 12. They are altogether become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. There is none that doeth good. I'm hypersensitive to this too, because things happen in our life every day, and we just automatically categorize them as either good or bad. Are we right? Not always. And in fact, probably most of the time, we're not right. When we categorize something, and that's why I put in there what is good. You know? Did I put that in the... Oh, that's the next one. The E is everybody's life is naturally unprofitable. Man in his natural state, under the curse of sin, is not profitable at all. The question is, profitable to who? Yeah, that can come into play, but what's the ultimate? God's plan. We're not profitable to God. You are here. God has a purpose for your life. And if you don't fulfill that purpose, you're not profitable. There's no return on investment. So you're not profitable. And then the next one is, no one does good. And the question is, what is good? You're not even smart enough to, in an absolute way, say what is good or what is bad. Sometimes what you think is good is actually bad. And perhaps more often than that, sometimes what you think is bad is actually good. Anybody think of an example?
Well, if someone gets really sick and has to be in the hospital for a while.
Ooh, that's bad.
But it could be good.
How could it be good?
Well, God has you there for a reason.
Mm.
To be a witness. Plus, He knows that you won't rest unless you're there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Paul was in prison. Yeah. Paul was in prison. Oh, that's bad. Was it? He was in prison more than once. One of the times he was in prison, it was basically more like what we would call today a house arrest. And Roman soldiers were guarding him. And what happened to those Roman soldiers? They all got saved. Yep. What's good, bad? Okay, let's do the medical thing. You have a ruptured appendix. That's got to come out, right? It'll kill you if it doesn't come out. So, where do you go? Well, where does the doctor put you? In the hospital. That's bad. It is. The worst bugs in the world you'll find in hospitals. Bad bugs. Viruses and bacteria. Jim?
The only one that I've heard of in my life is the lady doctor in Alaska that operated on herself with directions over the radio.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so she went in a hospital. Yeah. But just follow this logic. Your appendix is burst, it's got to come out. First thing you do is go to the hospital. That's bad because it exposes you to bad bugs. Then you go into the operating room and you trust that everybody cleaned that operating room the way it's supposed to, because if they left something unclean, what are they going to do when they get you in that operating room? They're going to cut your skin. That's bad. They're going to open you up, expose what's supposed to be on the inside to the outside environment. That's bad. Yeah. Hopefully they find your ruptured appendix and they finally cut it out. That's the good part. They get the ruptured appendix out. They sew you back up, and hopefully you don't get an infection post-surgery, and you're back home in a few days, and everything is hunky-dory. Guess what? Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes people do get infections and can get seriously sick because of them. So we're not qualified to ultimately decide what is absolutely good or bad. Only God. And that's the only way Romans 8:28, when we get to it, works. All things work together for good. Who's good? God's good. All things work together for good. Okay. So what does this mean? What does it mean that we're all under sin and we have all this bad stuff? We're continuing. Yeah, everyone's mouth is defiled. We're running out of time. And guess what? He spends from verse 13 to both verse 13 and 14, all about this hole in the middle of your face. Wow. Why is that? Because it's filthy. There is so much bad that can come out of that hole in the middle of your face. Where does it ultimately come from? Well, it comes from your mind, right? I'm sure you've known people that have no filter between their brain and their mouth. Whatever they're thinking comes out of their mouth. And a lot of times, it's not pretty. So a lot of bad things can happen through the mouth. And he uses some very descriptive language when he says, their throat is an open sepulcher. That's where dead people are. They open their mouth, and there's dead things in there, you know? With their tongues they have used deceit. They're lying. The poison of asps, snakes, is under their lips. Their mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Wow. And you know the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. One of the biggest lies that you'll ever hear. Words, yes. Exactly. So, and I was going to bring it up. Thanks, Tim. It's not, I think it's the Apostle Paul talks about this. It's not what goes into your body that defiles a man. It's what comes out. And it comes out, a lot of it comes out exhibited through that hole in your face. Okay. We're quickly running out of time. Destruction is the only result of all this. Destruction. Violence comes naturally. Oh, I got the destruction before the violence. Violence comes naturally. Look what he says. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Next one. Destruction is the only result. Destruction and misery are in their ways. There is no peace. Why do so many people live lives of constant anxieties and upheavals and depressions and whatever else? There is no peace when you're under sin and living under its absolute sway, so to speak. There is no fear of God. That's the one thing that people probably don't think of near enough because they're so concerned about their personal rights, their individual rights. And they don't think about God's rights, and they have no reverent respect of that. Well, verse 8 and verse 19, Paul basically tells us, guess what? We don't have any excuses. There's no excuses because the law spells it out. Now we know that what things soever the law says, it says to them who are under the law. Who's under the law? Not just the Jews, everybody. God's law. And now, and remember, he's already told us that those people that may have not had the exact Mosaic law to grow up under had a law unto themselves. The Gentiles had a law unto themselves. So we're all under this. All right? And we don't have an excuse because the law is the one that teaches us. The law shows the right way to live. And the right way to live is righteously, right? Righteously. Okay? But then, so we do not have the excuse. We cannot say, I didn't know. People that grow up without any religious background or training whatsoever, they still know. They know enough so that they are without excuse. Because God puts it in them. They don't have that excuse. Finally, then, what does the law prove? What does the law prove? Simple. The law shows me I can't do it. So, if the law shows me, here's the standard, and you can't reach it, then I know that there's no righteousness by works. There's no righteousness by works. I cannot earn my way to a state of righteousness in God's eyes by being the best person that's ever lived. Because the best person that's ever lived, except one, we all fall short. We all are disavowed, so to speak, because we're all under this blanket of sin. Now, next week, we get to talk about the positive side of the coin. And that should make us feel a little bit better.